now watching Way Back Wednesday, sponsored by Davenport Auto Park, the ride of your life. And also sponsored by Flores Glass, serving the area since 1977 with residential and commercial work.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Way Back Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcock. So glad you could be with us tonight. After the last week's show and the week before that, we were talking about the old Al Coke and Little and Henry business over on Nash Street, and how I could not remember that building to save my life. Still can't, for that matter. But during the research for that show, I stumbled across a couple of things that kind of piqued my curiosity and frankly surprised me. Number one, it was way before my time, so I couldn't possibly remember some of this stuff. But I did remember the name of a particular restaurant, but I never had any recollection of it being in that area. So long story short, I went to digging to see what I could find about a particular restaurant. As it turns out, that story led me down the path for 3 different restaurants, and a fourth, you might want to say a restaurant slash eatery, I guess more specifically we call it a soda shop. So anyway, that's what tonight's show is about. We're going to talk about the evolution of a couple of restaurants in town, 3 to be specific, and how they moved about town and had different owners, and the migration of these businesses, and how they impacted the downtown Rocky Mount business climate, if you will. When I think back just to the times when I was a child, prior to the days of Tarrytown Mall, and certainly before the days of Golden East Mall, people would come from literally a 50, 60, 70-mile radius to shop at downtown Rocky Mount. There was just stores galore, and there was every kind of store you'd want to purchase from clothing stores to hardware stores to toy stores, sporting goods stores. I mean, if you had a need for a product or service, downtown Rocky Mount met that need for many, many years. And so it's kind of, for me personally, it's kind of a sad commentary that of all the businesses that used to be downtown Rocky Mount and how they used to serve the community, how by and large Rocky Mount downtown, I hate to say has died. There's a lot of that kind of talk going around now. I hear folks all the time talk about how dead it is in downtown Rocky Mount and how it's never coming back. And that's possible, I suppose, that it could never come back. I'm still optimistic. I consider myself an eternal optimist, and I'd like to think downtown Rocky Mount can come back. A lot of things need to change, but that's neither here nor there. So let's get right into this. As I said, I got to looking and delving into specifically, I'll tell you this a little bit to start off the show. When I realized that Jack and Francis restaurant used to be on Nash Street, that kind of shocked me because I never knew that. I remember that they had been on Tarver Street. I even seem to have a recollection, maybe somebody can clarify this for me, because I did some research and could not confirm this, but for some reason I seem to have a recollection of them being in some way connected to a restaurant down at the beach. Of course, I'm talking about Jack and Francis Redding. And so with that thought in mind, I went looking to see what I could find. And so I had to go way, way back to start working my way forward. So Lee, let's put up picture number 1, or I don't know, it's not a picture. This first one is actually an excerpt from the 1914-1915 city directory. And I draw your attention here to the little starred area aspect down near the bottom of this. And it's just a screenshot from the 1914-1915 city directory. You see it says New York Cafe. Now, we've talked in the past on past shows about the New York Cafe. It was a very popular restaurant for a number of years in downtown Rocky Mount. But in 1914/1915 Rocky Mount City Directory, the New York Cafe, you see there was listed on South Main Street near Nashville Road. Okay, that's well south on Main Street. Further south, I never remember that it existed down there. Certainly, this is well before my time again, too. But anyway, I show you that because there was an evolution, if you will, of the New York Cafe, its owners over the years, and how that ties in with Jack and Francis. We'll get to a little bit later on. So let's move on and lead to item number 2. This is actually an excerpt from the Rocky Mount Telegram from April the 28th of 1917. And we'll have it up on the screen for you there in just a moment. It's a little bitty ad, it's a little short blip, and it actually is a reference to, can we get that up there, Lee? I saw you had it popping up there momentarily and it went away. There you go. Again, this is from April the 28th of 1917. You see there, wanted the public to know that the New York Cafe has moved to number 113 Tarboro Street. Okay, keep that address in mind because, and also if you would keep in mind that over the years, one of the things that we've seen is that street addresses have changed, sometimes a number or two, sometimes several digits. And so when you start looking back 7,500 years ago at an address and then look at what's in that location today, sometimes the addresses don't correspond exactly. They're often close, and sometimes they are the same, but quite often they're not either. So that being said, 1917, the New York Cafe has moved from well south on Main Street to 113 Tarboro Street. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's move to number 3, if we would, Lee. And by the way, I'm trying some new technology here tonight, so bear with me. I brought this little device here. It's actually a Kindle, and I had a thought that I could, instead of printing off all these pages, I normally bring a fistful of printed pages. I was going to try to utilize this little Kindle, and so we'll see how that works out. It may not work out too good at all, actually. But anyway, I'll read this to you real quickly. It says, the New York Cafe, one of the most desirably located and up-to-date cafes in the city, the New York Cafe, makes an especial bid for the service of the man that is particular and that really cares, the connoisseur. This firm is managed by an experienced man, and Mr. John Leludis is well known in the restaurant business in this city. All that the market affords at all times, the New York Cafe extends to you an especial, I like the way they say especial, invitation to visit them and to eat here when you come to the fair. You will find the service unexcelled and the price is right. So this ad appeared September the 24th of 1917. Okay, this was the first recollection, or first, I won't say recollection, I didn't remember this obviously. This is the first understanding I had that Mr. Leludis was actually the original owner of the New York Cafe. And we'll progress this on as we go, but just keep that in mind because we've talked with Mr. Leludis before in past shows and his affiliation with another gentleman that we'll talk about in just a minute too. So let's move on, Lee, to item number 4 then. Fast forward a bit to November the 30th of 1934. Okay, this is actually an ad for the Exum Tailoring Company, and you see they have a complete line of woolens and bolts to select suits from. So you could go in there and get a custom-made suits, what it boils down to. But what I want to draw your attention to is on the very bottom of this ad, it says opposite the New York Cafe, and you see their address, the Exum Tailoring Company address, is 112 Tarboro Street. Okay, so they were on one side of the street. The New York Cafe was directly across the street, and that address appears to have changed a little bit over the years, from 111 to 112. I'm sorry, 111 to 113. Keep in mind your even numbered addresses are going to be on one side of the street, and the odd numbered addresses are going to be on the opposite side of the street. So the Exum Tailoring Company was at 112 Tarboro Street, and it says opposite the New York Cafe. Okay, and again, this is 1934 by now. We're looking at an ad from 1934. And the New York Cafe has now been in business at least since 1917. Apparently, Mr. Leludis had been in business for a number of years before this first ad appeared in 1917. But in any case, by 1934, the New York Cafe has been in business now for several years and at least 2 different locations. Okay, let's move on then. The 1936 Rocky Mount City Directory had this listing right here. And you see there, and I want to draw your attention to this too because this all ties together. Trust me and bear with me. You see the address there of 137 to 141, and we're talking about Sunset Avenue there. And you see it says Rocky Mount Bowling Alleys, Malted Milk Shop Confectioners. Okay? And again, this is from 1937. I'm sorry, 1934, Rocky Mount City, I'm still wrong, 1936, Rocky Mount City Directory. And at that time, the address of 137 to 141 was being occupied by the Rocky Mount Bowling Alley and the Malted Milk Shop Confectioners. Okay, all right, let's fast forward a bit, Lee. Item number 6. Rocky Mount Telegram, December 24th, 1937. This is an ad for H.L. Hicks Drug Company, okay? And the only reason I included this ad was because, Lee, if you could zoom in on the very bottom of this ad for our viewers, and let's take a look at that, what I've got encircled there in red. You may be able to see it already on your screen, but it's actually Jack Redding. Now, Jack Redding's name was actually John, and as is often the case, Jack is a nickname for John. But when this ad came out in 1937, Jack Redding was actually working at Hicks Drug Company. And keep in mind also, it was very common back in these days for almost all drugstores to have a soda fountain where you could get a soft drink, a bottled drink, or some kind of milkshake or light sandwiches or whatever. Some of them even had hot dogs and hamburgers. But Jack Redding, doesn't say his position here, but in 1937, Jack Redding was working at the H.L. Hicks Drug Company here in Rocky Mount. Okay, Lee, let's move on then to the next item. Item number 7, I believe it is. June the 24th of 1938, this ad appeared. And it's actually 2 ads, one above the other, and I included them both because this is one of those congratulatory ads. We talk about this many times. It was quite common when a new business would open up, there would be a congratulatory ad placed by many businesses in the area, certainly in the general area of where the business was. But this is a New York cafe, is now perfectly air conditioned by Frigidaire, and you see installed by Standard Electric Company. And the top ad says, "Eat in cool comfort at the New York cafe, thoroughly air conditioned by Frigidaire." So in 1938, to have a fully air conditioned business was something that was pretty rare. There were a lot of businesses that were still having to raise their windows in the summertime and have fans running to circulate hot air around. But in 1938, the New York Cafe, kind of catering to an upscale clientele, is my gathering here from some of the ads that I saw and some of the things that I've read about the restaurant. It tended to kind of cater to a little bit of an upscale client. And as such, they wanted to be comfortable. They wanted them to be able to come in and eat, enjoy their meal without being hot, sweaty, if you know what I mean. Okay, let's move on, Lee. Number 7, was that 7, Lee? I lost track of my place here. That was 7? Okay, let's go to number 8 then. Thank you. March the 16th of 1939, this article here appeared, and this was one that, like I said, kind of caught me off guard because I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a little bit of a long article, but it says, Spiro Kanoulis, resident of Greece until he was 10 years of age and living in Rocky Mount for more than 30, might be referred to as a veteran cafe proprietor. He opened the doors of the New York Cafe every morning at 4 o'clock, 7 days of the week, for a total of 10,936 times until last Thursday. His greatest diversion is baseball and picture shows, except on Thursdays when he dons a, I can't even read it, it's kind of a blurry, I think it's some kind of coat, well, clothing anyway. But anyway, obviously Mr. Kanoulis was a very civic-minded individual. We've talked many times in previous shows about his donations of sporting equipment, everything from uniforms to ball bats to gloves to football helmets and so forth, to the local sporting team. He's a big high school sports fan. So, but this was the first reference that I saw for Spiro Kanoulis to be connected with the New York Cafe, and this is 1939, okay? So the previous ad we mentioned, Mr. Laludis, apparently had it before Mr. Spiro Kanoulis did, and then I guess they became partners at some point. But anyway, again, New York Cafe is still running, still going strong. So let's go ahead and lead to item number 9 then. September the 18th, 1943, this ad appeared, and you see it says, "Meet your friends at Center Soda Shop. Our fountain service is noted for being extra good. Think we're bragging? Come see for yourself." And you see the address there is 140 Sunset Avenue. And if you remember from the ad we saw a few moments ago, there was a bowling alley along there, and then there was a soda shop / confectioner shop there within the same address range of the bowling alley. So this is right next door. The Center Theater is right next door to all of this other activity going on. And this is, again, from 1939. We're at picture number 8, aren't we now, Lee? This is 8 right here. This is 9 here. I've got a little check. Okay, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You on the air?
Randy Don Bullitt built the Center Theater in 1938. There were 2 adjacent buildings on each side. One side was the Center Soda Shop run by Jack and Francis Redding. On the other side was a barber shop run by Mr. Denson.
And these were adjacent to the Center Theater, is that right?
Which was a part of the Center Theater, actually, yes. It was when the Center Theater was built, both those buildings were built at the same time.
And your father built these buildings?
That's correct.
I did not realize that.
38.
How about that?
1938. I remember going to that when the building was being dug.
How about that? Well, I did not uncover that during my research, but I'm so glad you called in and shared that with us. That's interesting to hear. It sure is.
Very good. Enjoy your program. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Great.
All right. So there you go. You know, I said every week that I do this show, I learn something I didn't know previously about my hometown, and that just thrills me more than you can imagine to learn something every week about this place that I've called home all my life. So that's great to know that. Okay, so let's move on then, Lee. I think we're at number 10 now, if I understand correctly. I'm trying to keep track a little better here. All right, you see there, notice the Center Soda Shop will be open all day Thanksgiving Day with your favorite sodas, sandwiches, and fruit drinks. And you see there at the bottom, Jack Redding was a proprietor. And again, this is 1945 that this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram. So very early on, Jack and Francis, as Mr. Bullitt just alluded, were in the kind of the business, if you will, of serving the public. Sodas and sandwiches, fruit drinks, and so forth was kind of the beginnings of the business. That's kind of how it got started. But from a very early time, they were involved in serving the public. And one of the things that I found really interesting about not only the way that Jack and Francis Redding ran their business, but the way many restaurants of the time, I'm talking about the 30s, 40s, even into the 50s, most of these restaurants were open literally 6 and sometimes 7 days a week, from early in the morning till late in the evening, sometimes 8, 9 o'clock at night, on a skeleton crew. And you know, I complain all the time about going into a restaurant and not having enough help and you're having to wait. But I can only imagine, you know, having to try to run a business that was busy and only having maybe the couple of owners or the owner, husband and wife, and maybe 1 or 2 helpers. These folks put in some really long, difficult hours running these businesses. Let's move on, Lee, to number 11 then. June the 19th, 1947, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram. And if that fellow there looks familiar to you, he should. Let's zoom in on that at the bottom, Lee, so our viewers can kind of take a look at that and get a little better look at who we're talking about there. But as you see here, the caption reads, "In his 14 years behind the soda fountain, Jack, hooray for Duke," he must have been a Duke fan, "hooray for Duke," Redding estimates that he has concocted more than 1 million soft drinks and sodas and still goes about his job with as much vigor as ever, with a smile for everyone. Jack came to Rocky Mount 15 years ago, and keep in mind this ad is from 1947, it says, and opened the Center Soda Shop in 1941. Jack and his wife, former Frances Newnham, have 2 small children, Jackie Lee, age 4 years, and 4-month-old Ernest Lynn. If Ernest Lynn doesn't ring a bell too, maybe his later name would. He was Buzzy in later years. Oh, we've got a call. Hello, caller, you on the air.
All right, you're talking about those places of businesses like Jack and Francis's sandwich shop, whatever, being there and being in place for 7 days a week. Back in those years, there was a very much elevated preference of a blue law that would not let certain businesses be open on the day of Sunday.
Right.
And that became an issue, whatever, between Nick and Mayo Body when they tried to open up Zip Marts and whatever. So there was a bit of controversy going on that was tied to a blue law in the municipality of Rocky Mount in those years.
And you know, that carried on well into the 60s and 70s. I remember blue laws myself. I worked for a couple of places.
I read an article up there in the library where Mayo Body wound up getting charged and was arrested for trying to open up a convenient mart called the Zip Dairy Mart over on Raleigh Street, about a block away from where the dairy bar was.
I've heard that story too. I sure have.
That's about the way it was. Somebody wanted to bring Mayo Body into a proceeding that I'm sure that was a thorn in the side of a whole lot of his associates.
Don't you know it was? Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Ah.
All right, buddy. Thank you here. We'll see you. All right, Leah, bring it back to me. It's time for our first commercial break here. So when we come back from the break, we're going to continue on this journey. Going to follow along with Jack and Francis Redding on their journey and how they ran two parallel lives, three if you include their personal lives at home. So don't go anywhere. We'll talk about that when we come back. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
And we're back. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Way Back Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. And we're kind of tracing the history and the evolution of three restaurants in town. And this started, for me anyway, for tonight's show, it started out after become aware that Jack and Francis Restaurant, for a while anyway, was located on Nash Street. I never knew that. And so when I saw that and I was researching the Alcote, Little, and Henry building, that six-story building that we talked about last week, I said, well, I wonder how that came together. You know, where they started, how they went from Nash Street to Tarver Street and so forth. And so as I got to digging into this storyline and finding that there were actually multiple paths and they all tied together into at least 2 or 3 different restaurants. 4 if you include the Walnut Shopping Center restaurant, and the Nash Street restaurant, the Tarver Street restaurant, and the little coffee/soda sandwich shop over by the Center Theater. So, and you know, it was just really interesting to me that all those businesses for a number of years were very successful. You know, I ate many a good meal over at the Walnut Shopping Center restaurant. I certainly ate many a meal at Kay's restaurant. I don't know that I ever went in the Jack and Francis restaurant when it was being run by Jack and Francis. If I did, I was very young. But I certainly remember going into Kay's, which of course was the same building, many times over the years and had many good meals there. All right, let's jump back into it. Item number 12, January the 27th, 1953, This ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram, or I say ad, it was actually an article. And you see the headline, "Tragedy is averted at park here Monday. A 5-year-old local youngster is credited with preventing what easily could have been a tragedy at Sunset Park Monday. Buzzy Redding, age 5, son of Jack and Frances Redding at 603 North Taylor Street, and 3 other youngsters were making an unauthorized tour along the banks of the Tar River when 3-year-old John Mebbin, son of Marvin and Martha Mebbin of 601 North Taylor Street, slipped on the muddy bank and sprawled feet first into the river. Young Buzzy," now this kid's 5 years old, keep in mind, Buzzy's 5 years old here, "grabbed his companion by the coat and dragged him from the water. Aside from a severe case of crying, young John only suffered a few minor scratches." Cute story. Thankfully had a happy ending. Could have been so much worse. But for a 5-year-old to have the presence of mind to reach into the river and grab his 3-year-old friend there by the coat and pull him up is a remarkable feat. And I want to, next time I run across John Mebbin, I'm going to ask him, does he remember when this happened? As young as he was, he may not have any recollection of it. But anyway, I thought it was a neat story, and it just happened to pop up when I was looking for, you've heard me say before, when I'm using some of these research tools that I use, particularly the newspapers.com website, I will search for a particular phrase, or it may be someone's name. In this case, I was searching specifically for Jack and Frances Redding. And so all kind of things come back. And in this case, this article here came back talking about when Buzzy was 5 years old, rescuing a friend from the river. So I just thought it was a neat story there. Okay, Lee, let's move on then. Number 13. August 10th, 1954. Frances Redding School of Dance. How many remember that Frances Redding had a school of dance? And this was not some fly-by-night, casual thing. She was very much into dance. Her and Jack both went to school. They studied dance. There was multiple competitions all over the country where they would train kids and have recitals, if you will, dance recitals. And so I can't tell you how many articles I saw referencing Frances Redding School of Dance and events that she either chaired or that she was in charge of. So in addition to conducting her own dance classes, she would also chair events and volunteer herself to be involved with, particularly with young kids who wanted to learn to dance and so forth, the competitions and special occasions. And I read these news clippings and these articles about her. And I thought, my goodness, how in the world could this lady and her husband run a business that's open 7 days a week, 14, 15 hours a day, and she still has time to be involved with something like a dance studio? But they did. I mean, somehow they found time to do these things, I should say. And by all accounts, were very successful at all of it. So let's move on, Lee. Number 15, I think we are now. Here we go, and this is another example, another ad I saw. Mr. and Mrs. Jack Redding and children, Buzzy and Jackie, Ms. Judy McRae and Mrs. L.A. Newman, Ms. Redding's mother, are spending 2-week vacation touring Florida. They attended the Orange Bowl game on New Year's Day, and Ms. Redding and Ms. McRae will study dancing while in Miami with Sherry Pex, a well-known choreographer. The Frances Redding School of Dance will reopen on January 10th. Miss Sadie Ward is taking new enrollments for Miss Redding. So, as I said, they were heavily into this, and Miss Redding and Buzzy both, for that matter, and the kids, as you see, went on these family trips, and they would go somewhere where they would take in a ball game, in this case, a Orange Bowl football game, and then go immediately to a dance class somewhere and study under a well-known choreographer. And it just blows the mind to think about how much time they devoted to a life outside of their personal life. I guess in some ways this was very personal to them. They obviously enjoyed it, and so I suppose where some families might spend time together in the backyard gathered around a grill, these folks would go somewhere and study a dance, and that's great. That's absolutely great. Okay, let's move on then. I think we're at number 15 if I'm correct here. June the 7th, 1955. This ad, this article I should say, appears very short. It says, Redding to open new shop in city. Jack Redding, owner and operator of the Center Soda Shop for the past 13 years, today announced plans for the opening of the Jack and Francis Walnut Shop at 9 o'clock Wednesday morning. The Walnut Shop, located at 703 Walnut Street, back of White's Supermarket. Who remembered that? White's Supermarket will be open daily from 9 a.m. to 12 midnight and Sundays from noon until midnight. Redding has announced that the shop will feature hot dogs, hamburgers, short orders, delicatessen foods, and so forth. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Wayback Wednesday, what is going on?
What's going on, my friend? How are you this evening?
I'm doing just fine.
Well, great. Good to hear from you. What's on your mind this evening?
Are you being informed, or have you heard what's coming to Tarboro?
What's coming to Tarboro?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have. Enlighten me.
We're having a Baskin Robbins, we're having a Dunkin' Donuts, we're having a Little Caesar.
Ooh, man, y'all getting big time over there.
Yes, sir. Tarboro's growing.
Well, I'm tickled for you. I really am. Those are all good eateries, and it'd be a nice addition to the existing eateries in Tarboro.
Yeah. Has Rocky Mount got a Dunkin's?
Oh, yeah, we got a Dunkin'.
Yeah.
Tasty
y'all been had that for a long time, ain't you?
Yeah, we got a Dunkin's and a Krispy Kreme, and we got Ann's too. Still got Ann's donuts over here too on Sunset Avenue.
Yeah, I like Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, they're all good.
I'm gonna have to try Dunkin's when they get open.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
And then too, we having a Baskin Robbins. We having it's got 31 flavors of Baskin Robbins.
Yes, sir. That's good eating too. I like ice cream. Yeah. All right. Well, look, thanks for calling in.
We're going to see you later, buddy.
All right, have a good evening now.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, man, good eating all the way around. Okay, well, like I said, so they opened up this Walnut Shop restaurant at the Walnut Shopping Center. And, like I said earlier, I've eaten over there many times over the years. And I want to say that Mr. Goff, is that his name? Mr. Goff was running it the last time I was in there eating. But there were at least 3 different owners who had a restaurant in the Walnut Shopping Center. And as the article here says, that shopping center is located behind White Supermarket. I never knew that there was a White Supermarket anywhere except around the corner down Raleigh Road, and or further down Raleigh Road, I should say. So anyway, let's move on to the next item. White Supermarket. Here you go. I took this screenshot from a Google search. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
All right, and you're talking about Mr. White having the supermarket over there. When that shopping center was built over there on Walnut Street, it was built by Modern Builders. Albert Rabel was who built it, Jimmy Rabel's daddy.
Right.
And that business, Mr. White, that had White Supermarket later on down Raleigh Street, that's where he got started in that grocery store that was up there on the corner, right there across from the North Carolina National Guard Armory.
Right, I got it on the screen right now. Can you see it there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never knew that. There's been a dozen things at least in that building there where the grocery store used to be, but I never knew that White's used to be there until I was doing the research for the night show.
That's where Mr. White got his start. At White Supermarket was in that corner point of land directly across Walnut Street from the North Carolina National Guard Armory.
That's right. That's it.
All
right, buddy. Thank you. All right. So yeah, this is, I've tried to get a little broader view shot. Obviously the restaurant would be to your right off screen here from this shot I've got here, but this building, this is what Eric's talking about. This building was the original location for White Supermarket, and then down the right hand side there were several little shops along there, including a restaurant of course, and there was a couple, a ladies' hair place was down there for a while. I think there was a health food nutrition shop down there for a while. I knew a guy who ran a TV repair shop down there and working on VCRs and different things. So there's been a bunch of little businesses in that Walnut Shopping Center over the years. But so this is where Kay and Francis Redding were in the 1950s. Okay, so all right, let's move on. Lead number 15, I think we are now. June the 7th, 1955. No, I'm sorry, we're at number 17. Pardon me. June the 7th, 1955. This ad appeared. It says, Jack Redding announces the grand opening and readiness for business of Jack and Francis Walnut Shop. And again, this is just what appeared in the Telegram announcing the opening of the Walnut restaurant. And, I heard about Jack and Francis Restaurant when I was little. Like I said earlier, I don't recall specifically going in and eating when they were all over on Tarboro Street. I may have, I just don't recall. But I certainly went in that space on Tarboro Street many times after Kay and Buzzy took it over. And so I have some very fond memories of eating there. And I've eaten many a good meal, very good meal over at this spot right here on Walnut, when it was a Walnut Shopping Center restaurant. But again, this was well after the fact that Jack and Francis had their place in there and then moved on. So, all right, let's move on ourselves then. Number 18, April the 9th of 1958. This short article appeared, and it says Jack and Francis Walnut Shopping Center, 703 Walnut Street, have sold their interest, effective April 1, 1958, to Marvin L. Wood, who will operate it as the Walnut Shop. Jack and Francis Walnut Shop will not be responsible for any debts after March 31st, 1958. So they were only there apparently about 3 years. They opened up in 1955. They sold it in 1958 to this Mr. Wood. Maybe someone remembers Mr. Marvin Wood. That name rings all kind of bells with me. I feel like I'm supposed to know who he is in some capacity, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I thought maybe he might be related to Robert Wood. Some of you may remember Mr. Robert Wood ran the gas station down on the corner of Church Street and Bassett Street for many years. Could be some family relationship there, I'm not sure. But in any case, in 1958, Jack and Francis sold the business over Walnut Shopping Center to Mr. Wood, and he took it over, effective, as you see, after March 31st, 58. Okay, let's move on. Number 19. December the 9th, 1959, this appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram. And you see here, Jack and Francis Redding opening new eating place on Tarboro Street. Jack and Francis Redding, a popular young couple who have spent years here as restaurateurs, were all set today with their latest venture, known simply as Jack and Francis. The restaurant, located at a familiar site on Tarboro Street, where John and Spiro, and he's talking about John DeLutis and Spiro Canouclas, held forth for nearly 40 years in their New York cafe, has a shiny new decor. Outside light shines through for a front picture window on a modern, airy layout. There, Jack and Francis hope to play host once again to young and old who have demonstrated in the past that they like to patronize places operated by this couple. The new furnishings include 8 booths and a counter of 12 stools. The well-known couple will serve home-cooked meals, sandwiches, and salads. The meals, 3 meals a day will be served, Jack said. The restaurant will be open, get this, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. I guess they did take Saturdays off. I didn't catch that earlier. But in any case, Jack and Francis bring in the new restaurant, years of experience in the business. They operated the Center Soda Shop here for 15 years, from 1941 to 1956. Later, they operated the Walnut Shop for 3 years. Tuesday, the two were in a dither making final preparations for the opening. They had a coffee pot for the many friends dropping in, wishing them well on this newest venture in the cafe business. So certainly they were very well experienced and catering to the public's taste, if you will. No pun intended there. And, by the time they opened this up, they had, as you see, many, many years of experience working in the restaurant business. So, okay, Lee, let's move on then to next item. August the 16th of 1961. Here you go. G.S. Tucker Furniture Company will be open all night tonight. The first 100 customers after 12 o'clock midnight will receive a free ham and egg breakfast at Jack and Francis Restaurant at 111 Tarboro Street. So, or you see at the bottom, or at Brown's Cafe at 209 North Main Street. So I just thought this was neat that these businesses would work together on these special events like this. Tucker Furniture will have a big furniture sale. They approached Jack and Francis and said, hey, would you be willing to provide some after-hours meals if we can send them your way? And Jack and Francis said, yeah, sure, send them on. And then he goes in and talks to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, if we get some customers coming in after midnight, will you take care of them? Mr. Brown says, sure, send them on down. So Tucker's open all night long for this furniture sale. And all night long, who knows how many folks came in there, but those that did got a free breakfast either at Jack and Francis or Brown's Cafe. It's just a neat story that you would not see happening today, unfortunately. This kind of inner business, business helping business, working together. It's just a sad thing that you don't see this kind of working together anymore. I wish you did, but unfortunately, I think it's gone the way of the horse and buggy, as we say sometimes on this show. All right, Lee, let's move on then. Number 22. Again, same day this article appeared. It says, announcing the grand opening of Jack and Francis Restaurant at 145 Nash Street. This ad right here, as I said at the top of the show, this is what kind of got me triggered on looking to try to find the history of the Jack and Francis Restaurant itself, as well as other restaurants occupied that space, because I never knew that they had ever been located at 145 Nash Street. So there for a while they had both locations, the 145 Nash Street location as well as the 111 Tarver Street location. And how they managed that is just an absolute mystery to me. Working the hours that they had to have the businesses open. Obviously they had help. They couldn't be at two places at the same time. So obviously there were other people, I'm sure Buzzy and Kay were working by this time and helping out in the restaurant. But still, that's a major undertaking to take on two very popular restaurants at the same time. And they did it. Okay, Lee, let's move on then. Number 22. This is actually another, and I think I'm a year off. Yeah, this is just, there you go. That was just an article that accompanied that other clipping I just showed you that was talking about the opening up of the new space there. Is it time for our next commercial break, Lee? Yeah. I thought it might be. Well, let's go ahead and take that break now. When we come back, we've got a few more articles and clippings to show you, a picture or two. We'll take your phone calls as always. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
There's a main nerve that leaves your back that goes into your hip and goes down your leg. It's called the sciatic nerve. A back injury can put pressure on that nerve, causing pain, numbness, tingling. Chiropractors can actually help that. At the Hammer Chiropractic Center on Sunset, we know exactly what to do. We have very good relationships with the doctors in Rocky Mount. We like to co-manage people's care. Some medications may help us do our jobs, and our jobs may help their medications work better.
And we're back. During the break, I had a caller, a viewer, that sent me a text saying that, and I had forgotten this, that for a while there at the old white supermarket location on the corner there, Raleigh Street and Walnut Street, Wooten's was in there. Wooten's supermarket was in that space for a while too. So there you go. Alrighty, so again, we're tracing the evolution of Jack and Francis Restaurant and the various owners who had businesses in these locations where they had restaurants at. And going through this little journey, if you will, it kind of brought back a lot of neat memories for me because, as I said, I've always loved to eat. My belly proves that, but I've always enjoyed going to a good restaurant and eating. And I've had some really good meals over the years at both Walnut Street and at Kay's Place over on Tarver Street. And, sadly, neither one of them are in existence anymore. They've both gone out of business many years ago. But, I think there's hope for downtown Rocky Mount. I certainly believe that. And if we can get some businesses like that and get some businesses, other businesses to support each other, that's what it's going to take in downtown Rocky Mount. It's going to take businesses supporting other businesses. The public can only do so much. And it takes the public too, obviously. I mean, we've got to, as a citizenship, we've got to get involved with trying to reinvigorate downtown Rocky Mount and support businesses that are down there. You hear a lot of negativity about downtown Rocky Mount, and for sure there's some negative aspects of downtown Rocky Mount, but it's not all bad, and I don't think the challenges are unattainable. I think we can overcome these challenges and bring Rocky Mount back, and I certainly like to see that happen. Okay, I'll step off my stump for a minute and get back to the show. All right, let's move on then. Number 23, I believe, is our next picture or next article. September 29th, 1963. This ad here, we just saw this out there. No longer be Jack and Friends restaurant. No. This is where they decided after only a few years there at the Nash Street address, they decided to close that up and move permanently over to Tarboro. They were already operating in Tarboro Street, obviously, so they just decided to close up the Nash Street location and just focus all their efforts on the one location at Tarboro Street. And so, the location over at Nash Street obviously didn't last too long, and I have a suspicion it was probably just too much to try to run two businesses that were open the hours that these two restaurants were open. Even with a good staff and good employees, I would imagine it was just really, really difficult. And so it's almost understandable that they would, kind of want to put all their focus on what was doing the best for them of the two restaurants. And it sounds like by all accounts that had to be the one over on Tarboro Street. All right, let's move on into the next item. I think we're at 24 now, if memory serves. Here you go. Oddly enough, shortly after Jack and Francis moves off of Nash Street, Jack and Glennis opened up their restaurant. Mr. and Mrs. Wait a minute, let's see here. Yeah, the owners and operators of the restaurant are Mr. and Mrs. L.D. Jackson. The restaurant was purchased from Jack and Francis Redding. So, interesting that even though Kay and Francis decided, or Jack and Francis decided not to stay, this other couple, Mr. Jack and Glennis Jackson, decided to go into spot and make a go of it. I don't recall this business at all, obviously. I would have been very young when they opened up there. If I ever went in, I do not recall. Maybe someone has a recollection of eating it with Jack and Glennis Jackson over there on Nash Street location, but I can't say I have any recollection of this. But like I said, there was plenty of business at this time in downtown Rocky Mount. You got to remember the banks that were downtown. There was just a lot of activity day in and day out, certainly Monday through Friday. And even on the weekend, people were shopping in the stores down there. And so it was just, it was, I guess, easier. It was a good word to say. It was easier for a business to make a go of it in downtown Rocky Mount because of all the other businesses that were down there. So maybe they can come back. Oh, we got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
All right. Well, that event over there trying to come into existence over there on Nash Street was about a block or so away from the Rocky Mount train station. The Rick's Hotel and its hotel, restaurant, and whatever, kind of come unraveled in the 60s, and the passenger train service was still in existence with the Atlantic Coast Line Railroad until the merger took place in 1967.
Right.
So anything within walking distance, restaurant-wise, of the Rocky Mount train station had a plus associated with maybe it could work.
Well, you bring up a good point, and that also goes back to talking about the original location for the New York Cafe being well down South Main Street, a very close proximity to the very area you're talking about. So yes, indeed, that would have been a determining factor in those businesses making a go. And when the trains in that area kind of died down some, I'm sure it hurt that area as far as the restaurants particularly.
And the Rick's Hotel coming down in 1963 or 64, and the accommodations that it provided, anything kind of close by would have been a shot in the arm if they could have made it work. But, whoever knows, just the way it was.
Yep, it's a shame, but those things happen for sure.
Right.
All right, buddy. Thank you here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right, Lee, let's move on then. Where we at? Number 25, I think? Does that sound right? Yeah. Okay, is this it? Okay, yeah, we go. Effective immediately, Jack and Francis Restaurant. By the way, this is from February the 16th, 1964. Effective immediately, Jack and Francis Restaurant, 111 Tarver Street, announces new operating hours for this restaurant, open daily 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and open Sundays 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. They don't mention Saturday, so I've got to assume they were open on Saturday too. And again, these are some absolutely killer hours. I mean, it had to be rough, not only being open those many hours each day, but staffing. It's just trying to get people to come in and work those long hours. But they did it for a number of years. I mean, that was the operating hours for this business and lots of others too, for many years. And then slowly as downtown Rocky Mount began to kind of diminish in popularity and businesses began to leave the area down there, as Eric said, the Rick's Hotel closed up and got torn down. And then the train station began to have less traffic over there. Just a lot of things combined that just kind of, over the years, it was just really tough for downtown Rocky Mount. I mean, it's gone through a migration, if you will, where a lot of businesses headed out west. Certainly, a lot of them went to Tarrytown Mall. A lot of them headed out to the Inglewood area and points west on Sunset Avenue. And so it was really, really tough for downtown Rocky Mount and the businesses that were there to hold on. Many of them did for a number of years, but many of them couldn't hold on, and they subsequently folded. All right, let's move on, Lee. Number 26, I think, is where we are now. February the 21st, 1971. Here you go. Open every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., serving breakfast, Jack and Francis Restaurant. So, it looks like by now maybe they are starting to kind of cut their hours back some. Maybe the crowds are not quite as heavy coming in. And maybe they're saying, we really don't need to be open these long hours. We just don't have the number of clientele that we've had in years past. So let's kind of cut back a little bit. And so this ad only addresses the Sunday opening hours, but I suspect by this time in the 1970, 71 time frame, because of everything we just talked about, I would imagine there were some serious discussions about how many hours do we actually need to be open during the week, and I think the decision was probably wise to curtail some of those hours and cut back somewhat. Okay, Lee, let's move on then. Number 27, I think we are now, January the 10th, 1979. Attention Jack and Francis customers. Jack and Francis Restaurant is changing their name to Kay's Restaurant. Kay and Buzzy Redding, owners for 9 years, will be serving their same home-cooked meals, super chef salads, homemade pies, sandwiches, and club sandwiches. Only the name is changed. So obviously by this time, Jack and Francis have retired and kind of stepped away from the business. As you see here, by this time, it's in 1979, so now for 9 years it says, Kay and Buzzy had been running the business anyway. And so they just changed the name from Jack and Francis over to Kay's Restaurant, and Kay and Buzzy began to, they didn't begin in 79, like I said, it's been running for 9 years by their ownership, and they just continued on with the name change. But, by all accounts, this has been, over the years, a very, very popular restaurant location. It was very popular with business people, certainly. The people who worked in the banks, as I said earlier, and the shop owners and the store owners and the managers and the people who had to be at their storefronts and open up for business, say at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, would certainly come down to Kay's Restaurant for breakfast. And prior to that, of course, Jack and Francis Restaurant too. And then, after store hours closed, because the restaurant was open at 8, 9 o'clock at night, the store owners, after they closed their business downtown Main Street and the close by streets within walking distance, they could go over to Kay's and get an evening meal. And so it was, again, the business helping business and business supporting other businesses, and it enabled that spot to be a successful business for many, many years. Okay, let's move on then. Number 29, I think we're at now. February 17th, 1983. And you see there, says for 40 years, Hungry Rocky Mount citizens have made their way to, at lunchtime at 111 Tarver Street, originally the New York Cafe, The restaurant in 1961 became Jack and Francis Restaurant when Jack and Francis Redding moved their business from a site near the old Center Theater to Tarboro Street. New Kay's Restaurant, the business owned by Kay and by Buzzy and Kay Redding, has a new look, and so, as I say, they carried on the tradition and were very successful at it for a number of years. We're almost out of time. Let's move on to the next one. 1987, I think we are now, November 30th. You see there it says, Kay's Restaurant continues 70-year tradition. This is a very long article. It was a very nice piece. I did read this whole article, and that's a great shot inside the restaurant there. You see the booths and the counter with the stools at the counter there. It was just a really neat place to go. It was a gathering spot, if you will. A lot of people would go in there and just sit and have a cup of coffee. People would meet there for lunch and discuss business plans or weekend plans or whatever it may be. But it was really one of those types of spots. Kind of brings to mind the Mayberry Cafe, if you will. If you're familiar with the Mayberry Cafe on the Andy Griffith Show, that's kind of what I think about when I think about Jack and Francis and later Kay's Restaurant. It's kind of a place for people to go in and just gather, and it's kind of a homey place to be. Very comfortable, very good food, obviously, and a staple of Rocky Mount eateries for many, many years. All right, let's move on then. Our next one here from 1998. And sadly, Francis Newham Redding, 66, owner and operator of Francis Redding School of Dance, and Jack and Francis Restaurant, died Sunday. Goes on to give her a funeral announcement there and so forth. Surviving husband, John Franklin Redding, again, he went by Jack. One son, Ernest Lynn Buzzy Redding of Rocky Mount. One daughter, Jackie Lee Williams of Wake Forest. And one sister and 4 grandchildren. Okay, Lee. And lastly, the last one tonight, December 21st of 2003, sadly, Jack Redding himself passes away. And he was 83, I think I'm seeing there on the screen. And so, certainly they both had a very successful run in business, both in the restaurant business and with Kay running the dance studio for a number of years. And there you go. This is another sad story here. Those that may remember Ken sadly passed away some years ago, but this was Buzzy and Kay's son, and he worked there at the restaurant too, the same one his grandparents had run for a number of years, and his parents, and then he had it for a while himself. But in any case, it was just a family-run business that enjoyed a lot of success and brought a lot of good to downtown Rocky Mount. We need more businesses like this. I guess that's a good way to close out the show tonight. Rocky Mount got to where it was in the good days, in the good old days, if you will, by having business owners and business operators running businesses like this. And it was just a golden time to be in business in Rocky Mount. And I sincerely hope we can get back to those days at some point in the not too distant future. Okay, Lee, bring it back to me. That's going to do it for us tonight, folks. I did want to share one bit of information with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 4, going on 5 years of doing this show. You've heard me say many, many times, I so much enjoy learning about this history of Rocky Mount, my hometown. And I've learned so much myself preparing these shows each week, and it's just been a joy to get to meet you, the viewer, and talk with you, to have you come by and visit or shoot me a text message or call me on the phone. And as much as I've enjoyed it all, it's time to move on. And so I'm going to probably continue doing the show for another few weeks. We've got someone else going to take the show over. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to happen. But we'll be doing co-hosting for at least a couple of weeks, maybe, to get the new person acclimated with the format of the show and so forth. I don't anticipate or expect, for that matter, that they're going to be will run the show exactly the way I did. It's going to be a new host for the show, and they'll have their own ideas. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I say, I'm not gone yet. I'll be here for a little while yet. I promised the station that I would not leave them in a lurch, so I'm going to hang around till we get the new host settled in and comfortable doing the show. But it's been my pleasure to be with you each week for the last 4+ years, and I'll always cherish the time we spent together. That's going to do it for us tonight. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Way Back Wednesday. Good night.